Okay, another rant about the NBA. The NBA looks in some sense like it's trending up, in the sense of like scoring is up. We see the skill level is just insane, like how many people can shoot, how many tough shots people can make, all that stuff. So we have scoring up, skill level up. We have more international superstars than ever. The league's more global than ever. So why does it still feel empty? I'm not saying like that everything is just completely whack, but it just doesn't feel as engaging anymore. I don't really have time to follow a regular season, except for some highlights here and there. But I always follow the playoffs and have since, what was it? I think somewhere Derrick Rose's first year. This is way back. Was that like 2008 or something? Like when the Celtics, not even the Celtics run. So around 2008, I guess I started watching the playoffs. Grew up in the Netherlands, didn't have access to a lot of the stuff until League Pass came around. So, but was always a fan of the NBA. Had like all these championships DVDs from like way back to somewhere like the beginning of the 2000s. I think to the Shaq Kobe Lakers. So could watch all the greats from Julius Erving, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. Like just a handful of games of them. Usually with the kind of like summary of their season. And it's just like, it's just not the same. Like it feels emptier. You can see like in the All-Star, and the All-Star games, I guess like a very clear kind of sign why it is. So I have a couple of ways, how can we fix the NBA? What's the problem? How can we fix it? Just want to rant about that a little bit. Because I love this game. I've loved this game since I saw Michael Jordan in Space Jam when I was 8. Played basketball, love it. But there's just a lot of things that have changed since, well, of course, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Basketball has been like developing a lot, especially in the last 10 to 15 years, but not always for the better. And some of the changes have been purposeful. So some things are generational, but some things can, I think, actually be fixed. So first problem, it's not fundamental anymore. That sounds weird to say, because in some sense, of course, it is. Like it's always a kind of a hyperbole statement when you say something like that. Like it's not fundamentally sound anymore, but it is. Like if you're talking about this is supposed to be the highest level of basketball that's to be played, it's just baffling and embarrassing what they let the players get away with. So like, and of course I'm talking about the travels, I'm talking about the carrying. It's absurd. Just these two, like if you would just call travels, like it's getting so blatant that like 4-step layups are common. And I know the NBA has their little gather step rule that you can interpret any given way, depending on whether their cool dunk came out of it or not. But it's like, it's just sometimes so blatant that it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the best players in the world. Why do we need to give them 2 extra steps? Like it is so absolutely so frustrating to have that, especially people like a player like Ja Morant. Ja Morant, super talented, exciting to watch. Like how he dribbles the ball, it's not dribbling the ball. Like he just does this. Like to me, it's just absolutely frustrating to see that. Like to see the best players in the world get away with like kid level stuff that you would get called on when you were like, even before you were a teenager. Just like when you were a kid playing basketball, like they would be reinforcing those rules. Like no. You can't carry the ball. You can't double dribble. You can't travel. So it's that kind of like really ruins it, because it actually takes away from truly enjoying the greatness of these players. Like I'm not saying that as soon as you call travels and palming that everybody would be a bum, but you would see that some people are maybe not as good as they are. And I think that's kind of like, it feels like there's this marketing thing hanging over the NBA. Of course it is, because it's entertainment, it's a product. But as a lover of the sport, like of basketball, there you go, European basketball is really different. You got to maintain the integrity of the game, I guess in some sense, for the beauty of the game. Because I actually think like the rules actually create the beauty of the game, right? Like the reason why you can't do certain things makes it that people have to learn that certain skill, and it makes it beautiful to watch when people are within these rules able to be creative. But as soon as people are getting so much leverage and so much extra space. Like Kyrie Irving, similar as well, like one of the best handles ever. But at the same time, he can't. Like you have this little dribble hesitation where they basically pick up the ball. John Morant is notorious for this shit as well. He just basically picks up the ball. This defender closes the gap, as you should, because he can't dribble anymore, and then he just starts dribbling again. Like that is not. We talk about that, like the offense-defense balance. That is just not basketball, right? And it just removes all the fundamental things you would teach about defense as well. And then we get to the second point. There's no defense. And of course, again, hyperbole, of course there's some defense, and some defensive players are actually super skilled because of the handicap that defensive players have right now. But what I'm saying is there's no defense in the sense of defense is just completely, what do you call it? Yeah, completely handicapped, completely nerfed in this game. Like the update, they nerf defense. Like, and I get it. Like in a transition, like what you saw, if you got to see the development, right? Like I thought, like beginning of the '80s, '70s, I think were a very high-paced game. Magic came in, then he slowly towards the '90s became like a very slow-paced game, like smacking people around. Bad Boy Pistons, Knicks, Heat. You know, like a lot of these big teams, they were just beating people up. Slowed the game down a lot, and then in like the 2000s, early 2000s, I haven't seen a whole lot of the early 2000s to be honest, but what I did see was you could see that the game became, the defense had the advantage, you could say, and so in some sense you could say like the defense really developed and the offense didn't really, and maybe Mike is to blame in some sense for that because everybody wanted to be like Mike, so everybody wanted the ISO on the wing. And the offenses didn't develop in the same way. You had a lot of those ISO scorers that wanted to be like Mike. But if you look at the EuroLeague, you see exactly what you should do if defense has the advantage. You need to be very tactical, very patient, shoot late in the shot clock, use the entire team, you know, stuff like that. But it's like the defense caught up before the offense could catch up. And then they started removing stuff like hand checking, you know, like changing the rules a bunch. And to me, like, I get that. Like, I got that. Like, I have seen these games where you're like, yeah, this is it's just ugly, you know? Still, ugly didn't mean bad, right? Like, if you look in the 90s when Michael versus the Bulls, that was ugly too. But it was so intense because every bucket felt like it was earned, like it was fought for. So what I think, as we've clearly seen, I think everybody can agree, some old heads might not, but skill level of the average player, and even maybe of the average superstar player, but I would say more of the average player has gone up like a lot in the sense of the average skills of being able to dribble, being able to pass, being able to shoot, like being able to defend a little bit. Like, I mean, bigs still now need to guard pick and rolls and stuff like that, so without touching people. So the skill level that you need to play the game in all areas of the game has increased. Like, you need more of the basic skills than you used to have. Like a big, back in the day, didn't need to have like a long 2-point jumper or even a 3-point jumper, let alone 3-point jumper. And now, like, you have to shoot, you have to be able to shoot, like at least long mid-range jumpers, but you should be able to shoot threes at a reasonable rate. Almost every player should be able to do that. And there's just a handful that can kind of get away with that because of their specialty. There's just a few specialty players kind of left. So that kind of, because that has happened, to me, it's clearly the time to beef up the defense again. Because if you look at it now, and I'm gonna call it, because there's a lot of kind of ripple effects of this no defense. What now? You're just not really able to defend a player. So what you get, and I come back to this, why there's no rivalries anymore, is that there's not really a sense of I made you miss. It's just basically, this is all am I allowed to do. You're going to hit or you're going to miss, right? And of course, again, hyperbole, there's some elite defenders and schemes, double teams that make people pass the ball and stuff, but it doesn't feel like you could say, an all-star squad of defenders in the sense of people who are all-stars on defense in the sense of they're just locking people up. Like, if they just play against them, like, you lock them up, right? Like, they don't score nearly as much as they normally could. Somebody you can really use their physical skills, their athleticism. So again, to me, that's also like interesting. So I get the NBA's like, oh, dunks, oh, look at that, threes, but it's actually way more engaging to watch for example, somebody really lock a scorer down and then seeing kind of frustration that comes out of that player and the kind of the tension you get there. So there we come to the next point to me. There's no more passion in the game, right? So I think allowing handshaking is like a very simple rule change. Like, it's not going to go back to the early 2000s. It's not going to go back to the 90s. Players are just too skilled for that, right? But it would drastically change this idea of having, like, what is it, like 7, 8 people averaging 30 points, where you're like, they're not all that good, right? Like, I mean, the people are good, but if you see how easy it is to score now, like for some players, and it's not saying that their offensive players are not skilled. I mean, still not everybody can do that. But how many players can do that, and how they are doing that, is because they basically just go in and out the lane without any repercussions, and then step ahead, don't jump, don't touch me, and then just shoot a jumper. Still, it's great that they can make that jumper. It's great that they have that insight of using angles and all that stuff. But come on, right? We want to see grown men play, like, and that's, I think, the no passion has to do with the no defense, I think. Because if you can really lock people up, that's when the trash talk is starting. Like if you lock people up, that's when you get in people's head, right? Like, of course, people can still have cold streaks and stuff, and you still occasionally have defenders that are really locking people up. Usually only in the post, like when I saw like Al Horford lock up Embiid in like last playoffs in these last couple of games. You could just feel it through the screen. This guy did not want to go at Al Horford, right? And I love that. Like, I love that. Or you see how people that play kind of 90s style in my mind, like a Giannis and like a Jimmy Butler, they play with that type of passion. They play with that type of physicality. I'm not saying that what Giannis is doing is what everybody was doing in the 90s, because no big was doing it like that, but I hope you get what I mean, like the spirit of the way he plays. And that's what I'm saying. No passion in this game is just ruining it. And I'm not, again, no passion. It's all relative. These people care in some sense about, right, like about their craft. But you see stuff like the NBA is purposely carving out the passion part. Like with these ridiculous technical fouls, with these silly, like flagrant fouls and stuff. Like, I get we don't want the bad boy Pistons. I get that, right? Like, I get that you don't want people to be clobbered over the head and like be like, so I did get that. But like, what is seen as a flagrant foul now, it's just sometimes just so absurd. Like, where you feel like that's just a hard smack. Get up and go play. But especially this taunting part. So the allowing hard fouls and the taunting part, to me, removes the passion kind of the game. Because if you know you're going to get smacked down, your will needs to be stronger. Basically, like you have, of course, you have a physical. You need to have the strength to kind of take the beating. But the bigger part is the mental part. So if you create and foster players that have to go through these things, have to be mentally strong, you get more mentally tough, and I think more passionate players, because now it just feels like, again, the flopping. The flopping is like absolutely killing this passion and the next part, pride part, but not allowing taunting. To me, it's just like, this is mano a mano, right? This is about like who's the best. Come on, let's get it. Like, this just should be, to me, physical, mental battle. Like, both sides of the game. And mental is not just talking trash or taunting in a sense of, but it's the strategic part of the game, of course, as well. But to me, like, I just saw a play where Giannis was just dunking over somebody, crazy play, and he's just like, I think he just did this, and he just like teed up. Like, how could I kill the few players that have passion in this game? How could I just kill that, right? Like, how could I just end that? To me, that's really, that's going to bite you. Like, that's going to bite you as the NBA. You think there's this, again, malice at the palace. I know what they're trying to prevent. But to me, it's always like, let's not act like malice in the palace was happening all the time, right? Like, we have these few famous brawls in the history of the NBA. But to me, it's like this fear. There seems to be like this, yeah, I can't say that, but as a minority, it feels like there's this maybe slight racial thing to it. Like, you can't have these black people just show their emotions. I don't know. It's just it just feels a little bit like that in the sense of, we're trying to present a product. We can't have that black male aggression over here, or male aggression. But to me, yeah, like that is that is such a huge part of the game. Like, sports is a metaphor for war in some sense. Like, the reason we have sports is so men don't really go and kill each other and go shoot each other and stuff. They got to get that male aggression out somewhere in a healthy, constructive way. So let them have that on the court. Like, this is what, again, that taunting, I'm getting back to another point about the rivalries. That taunting, that real emotion belt, just the same as with that harder defense, this will create not just competition, but real kind of antagonism. The idea of a real opponent that's standing in my way that I have to conquer. And this is actually, I would say, good for the league. Like, it's good for the storytelling of the league. Like, rivalries are powerful for the league, I think, as an entertainment product, right? So not even looking at from like a basketball, to me, like an aesthetic, like an experience of basketball. To me, it would greatly increase the entertainment of the product because it feels like you are raising the stakes. It feels like something, like it matters more. Like, and they say the problem they have now that the regular season feels like it doesn't matter anymore is also because of this, because you robbed this passion. You robbed the players from passion. So what could be like a mini rivalry in a sense of like, oh, I'm playing against that player. Oh, that power forward against that power forward. Who's the best? I'm going to take him out. Like, you want to see them go at it, right? And it should, like, seeing Reggie Miller do the choke signs and stuff, and like, of course that was against Spike Lee as well. But like this little taunting that you see players go at each other, this adds to the layers of story that you can tell about a game that a viewer can perceive, right, about the game. So yeah, they removed the fundamental, so fundamentals called travels and carries. No defense. Allow handshaking should be a great step. I think it would greatly allow strong, athletic defensive players to really become a problem. The passion part, allow basic taunting. We're not talking about like people pushing each other in the face and stuff. I get the no touching stuff, but you got to just be able to, like, in your face, or like just looking at people, right? Like, I mean, it just kind of exemplifies what kind of soft generation we've become. So connected to no passions, no pride. That is just exemplified by the All-Star game, right? Like, I mean, it feels more and more, and I get that is becoming just a business. That doesn't mean that people don't want to excel, they don't want to be the best they can be, they don't want to leave legacies. Again, I'm not saying like there's no kind of pride at all anymore, but you can see it in the All-Star game. Like, do you love this game? Do you want just to win? That if there's just competition in front of you that's claiming to be better than you, that's trying to beat you, so it's very, very clear, in a very practical sense, is going to exemplify that they're better than you by beating you. Like, man up, fight back. Like, looking at the All-Star game, like the past maybe 5 to 10 years, what was maybe the last great All-Star game was the one with Kobe, when Kobe died, when they finally started playing. And it's just pathetic that the NBA has to conjure up all these different kind of gimmicks to get these grown men to compete. I mean, pickup basketball isn't a basketball championship or something, but people go harder in a pickup basketball game than they go in the All-Star game. Like, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And everybody's always kind of like dumbing down, like, we're not expecting you. Like, of course I'm expecting you. When you have pride, when you were like, again, when I look at these All-Star games earlier in the 90s, again, they weren't playing championship level defense from quarter number 1, but they were playing D, because Karl Malone wanted to show he was better than Barkley, and Barkley wanted to show he was better than Karl Malone, and like all that type of stuff. Like, these people were going at each other. All these kind of narratives about these players against each other, Kobe versus Mike, all these things. They were like, I want to get him. I want to show him I'm better. We want to show that we're better. Like, this kind of mindset has to do with the pride part. And how do you fix that? This is really hard to fix because it's in the mind of the players. Again, I think if you would change these other things, like the fundamental part, getting called for all these carries is kind of humiliating, especially with Shaq and a fool around now. If you would have firmer defense, it's like nobody wants to get pushed around like a bum, right? Like, so if you're getting pushed around, like, something would ignite in these players to be like, hey, I gotta be stronger. Like, I gotta be more physical. Well, it'll take a season to come, probably, because I've seen sometimes people, for the first time, they allow a little physical play. Sometimes some referees in the playoffs, for some reason, all of a sudden do allow more physical play. And you just see the whining, just like the body language and the whining of these players, like, oh man, it's just like, grow the F up. And you see Allen Iverson, like this miniature human being getting smacked to the ground by Shaquille O'Neal, getting back up and just going and play. Like that really detracts from the game. Like that weak mental attitude, which I think you can kind of buff up by allowing stronger defense, allowing the taunting. Go resist it. Go do something back, right? Like go dunk on him on the other side. So I think, yeah, this sounds a little weird. The power of public humiliation. Like, this is really hard. Like, but just kind of beef up Shaq and the Fool. Like, go amplify, show the flopping, show all those stops. Right? Like make like a public show out of that. Like to me. Yeah, man. I don't know. It also has to do with like better basketball education in the sense, or like the training programs. It's very interesting to see kind of like the difference between the European players and the American-born players. That there's something about that. I heard a lot of people complain about that AAU system where a lot of youth comes up. That it's basically there's no system, there's no discipline. It's not really geared towards winning as a team. It's just kind of showing off your talent, which is kind of ingraining all these bad habits in these players. So what does that have to do with the pride element? It is our kind of, because you could say pride is, self-centeredness is not the same as a healthy pride in being like, I played this game, I played the right way, and I want to prove that I'm better than you, instead of just having like the kind of look at me. It's also possible, again, because of the no defense. If you get smacked to the ground by being cocky and like, first you would see you're not as good as you think you are, and you would kind of allow the game within the rules to kind of solve that issue. Because people would just get, some people would still be really good, like Michael was pretty cocky and arrogant, but MJ, but you would at least contain that a bit of people that are actually not really, that are kind of just getting away with a lot of stuff, and that's why they're kind of great. There's just nothing like physical harm and public humiliation. Physical pain, public humiliation with the taunting and stuff, that will help. So I really think that as what you can do in the narrative of the game, that could help is amplify winning small. And I think multiple people talked about this. I think it was Lillard on the Reddick podcast. Amplify winning small, like amplify spectacular games, amplify spectacular halves, amplify beating a rival. Again, you need to have a rival. These bragging rights, if you just amplify the championship, you don't need to amplify the championship. Everybody knows that is the goal, right? Like, that's why you're playing. But by just being like championship and nothing else matters, like most teams are not going to be able to compete for a championship. Well, like if you're lucky, there's maybe like 2 to 4 teams, like I don't know, that are really realistically gunning for a title, and you maybe have some upset, 1 or 2 upset teams around that. That means that most of the league, which is what like 24 other teams, 24 times what, 15 players that realistically don't really have a shot to win there. But you want to reward them for the idea of we made the playoffs, or we got a round further than last time, or like, I don't know, we swept them this time. All the little things. We had players selected in the All-Star game. We had a division banner. We had there's all these little things you can think of. We set a record as a team of like most assists or whatever. If you start focusing on these things, that can make the regular season more interesting again. I think you should just cut it short just a little bit. Maybe that will also help, like 10 games less. But this is especially a media thing, not really an NBA. Well, NBA has their finger, in some sense, in the pot, or at least they're influencing narratives as well with the way they present themselves, of course. So they can change this, right? Like again, yeah, stars. It's you got to go back in some sense, and this is really hard, especially with the new mobility of the teams. I think you got to go back to, because no pride also has to do with you don't just want you want the individual pride in the sense of like I'm a man, I'm a competitor, I want to fight against you, I want to prove that you're better. But the pride you're looking for is the pride that's connected to loyalty, right? So there's no kind of pride like saying like this is my neighborhood, or this is my city, or this is my family, right? Because it's bigger than you, and because it's bigger than you, this pride will have a more positive impact than when it's just you, right? When you're just saying like I'm the shit and I gotta. No, if it's in your team, there'll be this fight also more. Like the defense, the no defense part. There's also less. It sometimes feels like these teams are just kind of like groups of individuals, that they don't really feel like a team. They don't really. And again, the player movement has to do with that. Like if players are changing teams every other year, it's very hard to get the feeling like this is a cohesive group. But there aren't a lot of cohesive groups. There aren't a lot of groups that are allowed to gel and grow, right? Like, so the player movement, while of course brings some excitement in the off season, in the long term, it's in some sense damaging. Like, it keeps teams kind of like on their toes to be like, we got to be a good player environment for players. But that's the next point for me. It has gone in the wrong direction in some sense. Not having these cohesive teams makes that they have no pride anymore kind of in the place. That's also maybe like a generational thing, because I see kind of like that distrust in authorities and systems and institutions also creates this more individualized society, which you see then, I guess, in sports as well. And LeBron was, of course, kind of like the champion by starting a really that player movement kind of thing. And I guess we build them out by allowing to empower that narrative to be like, yeah, that's okay. Oh, now players were like, oh, okay, I'm going to do that, said Kevin Durant. And again, from purely a work perspective, I get it. You want to choose where you want to work, like all that type of stuff, right? But with the trade demands and all that stuff, like with Harden and stuff, it's detrimental, because you see there's no, again, if we can kind of get that back, but again, you're not going to get that back, to me, yeah, unless you get more of that physical style of play, more of that it feels that more is at stake. If you get beat up, like if you can physically get smacked around, it'll trigger something very primal in you about protecting yourself and standing up for yourself, but through the rules of the sport, hopefully. And just a little bit, like, let the emotion come. Like if you want people to have passion and pride, you gotta let them have emotion while they're playing the game. And we get to the next point, which is, I guess, connected to the idea of having pride in a group and the idea of having cohesive teams. That's the no responsibility. It feels like players are not being held accountable. And I guess this has, in some sense, maybe always been a problem in the league, like the star player, how do you keep him in check? But I think now more than ever, it feels like coaches, I saw a video, like a guy had a great video, I forgot his YouTube channel, but he had a great video about that, about coaching's not being allowed to coach. And that's absolutely true. Like, if you see how often they kind of change coaches, and I got to be honest, I was also calling for Mike Budenholzer to go, because he was just not making any adjustments. Anyway, but like, the problem is more that it feels like, is that bad behavior on a court actually corrected, right? Like, is in Europe, maybe you have the other end of the spectrum where it's more like almost like the coach is a superstar and he's just yelling at everybody like they're their dog. That's maybe a bit too much, but to have that weight and authority as a coach, to be able to just pull a star player, like, that, and yeah, maybe this is a feeling, because of course I'm not in the huddles, I'm not in the locker rooms and stuff, but if you just see how easily coaches get fired, like they're 1-2 years in, and you're like, okay, doesn't look nice, get out of here, right? Like, I'm trying to reestablish an entire defensive and offensive system with new people are coming in and out all the time, and you're expecting me to build that in half a year, okay, in a training camp. It's just like, if you look at like the greatness of Michael Jordan's legend, is that story of how he had to go through the Detroit Pistons, like losing to them 3 times in a row, getting a little closer, and then beating them, having that team gel, and only in that final year, like the 4th year, really coming together out of kind of like a desperation and a hunger of like, we have to beat them, right? Like that again, it's tied into the rivalries, but it's tied into, we are the team, right? Like, and not like, this is my job for this year and I'm probably out of here. Like, if next year that kind of mindset, and not, I guess, job security also for some players, like, doesn't foster that, right? Like, and to have those storylines, like, so this is the media's fault as well, to be like, a team is together for 2 years and already, like for example with the Celtics, yes, sure, I think they should have won that championship against the Warriors. They were ready, and they should have not messed around with the Heat and stuff. They should have been in the finals again. Like, they had the talent. And then they're like, yeah, can Tatum and Brown win together? And I'm like, just look at the frickin' Spurs. Like, are you stupid? Like, everybody's complaining about, Shaq and Kobe should have stayed together to get it longer, right? Like, but then the moment the two superstars are like, they get to the finals, really hard to get to the finals. Then they don't get to the finals, and sure, in a disappointing fashion, they should have been there to me. They were kind of playing with their food way too much, or just being sloppy, mentally not tough. Oh, is that going to work? No, it should be focusing on, they got to grow. Like, no, you're the Celtics. Like, you got to build. This is a team. How are you going to get over this hump? Like, push them like that, and not like, I think we should break them up, fire the coach, dump everything in the dumpster, go to the draft. You're like, you got to, like, that's just silly. Like, it's just so stupid. Like, the Spurs kept that core together and were able to win 5 championships in, like, a long stretch of time, right? Like, because they just tried to remain being a good team. That's why they were a good team. They were in the playoffs all the time. Sometimes they had upsets. They lost in the first round. But they just kept chipping away, working at it, and tweaking, and then they won a bunch of championships, right? Like, so I don't get that. So anyway, so that giving coaches the ability to really build something over like 3 to 5 years, to have them have at least a semi-stable cast of characters, and go and really go at that, right? Like, it's just very rare. Like, coaches like Eric Spoelstra, like Greg Popovich, Steve Kerr, I think like they're the only kind of long tenured coaches in the league. And I mean, you just see what Spoelstra is doing. Like, after the Miami Heat, like, they actually tried to get him fired, and Pat Riley was having none of it, luckily. So you gotta, it's just kind of like, again, it has to do with kind of like this generation. So I kind of hate the kind of prima donna vibe you're getting from a lot of people, because that's just also the way that this next generation is kind of groomed and raised by the social technology and the social technology. So it's hard to kind of fight the spirit of an age, right? In some sense, if you want that. But you got it. The only reason why the spirit of this age is here, because there was no accountability for these people, right? Like, if we just bring that back, if we bring those consequences back, like other generations had, not just in the basketball, like I think in the real world, but like, it's just healthy as a human being, and it will create, I think, a better product, because you will create more committed teams, more cohesive teams. I think they should bring over some EuroLeague coaches and just let them go crazy at these people, right? Like, to instill real systems in teams. Like, barely any team to me feels like they play in like a real system. There's so much just kind of, it's not like there's no strategy involved at all. I'm not saying like these are just playing pickup ball, and there's nuances to that, but it's not like the EuroLeague. Like, you saw how America got exposed. That's another, at the FIBA World Cup, which is another video maybe. But which was really interesting, that they were just exposed by more tactical basketball. Anyway, this is a different subject. But that to me also should save the NBA more. If you get great coaches, accountability for the players, you enforce the rules more. If the defense is tougher, you are incentivizing a more tactical, strategic brand of basketball that, to me, in combination with the NBA talent, that's kind of like having the EuroLeague system with NBA talent, will be really cool to watch. But now the NBA talent feels like it's actually being diluted because of all these extra things. It feels like it's not being shown at its maximum capacity, because they're playing easy mode, right? So one of the final points is the no rivalries, and this is kind of like this is kind of the combination of a lot of these things that I've been mentioning. Because why are there no real rivalries? One, there are no stable teams, so there's no so Bulls versus Knicks means nothing if everybody's different every year, right? Like, there's no, the teams got, like, the Knicks, it's got to be somebody, right? It's not just a logo versus a logo. And still, you can fake, like, what they try to do still with the playoffs, when like these teams like the Knicks and the Heat, famous rivalries. Yeah, they used to be, because they beat the shit out of each other. That's why it used to be a rivalry, right? And because with the coaching changes and stuff. But now, there's no rivalry. Even if they made, like, even with the Warriors and the Cavs in the finals, to me, that, even though they met, like, what was it, like 4 times in a row, 5 times in a row? I don't know what it was, 4 or 5 times, a lot. Even that didn't really feel like a rivalry to me. It was kind of like you knew you were gonna get there because they were the best teams in their conferences, like, by far. No real challengers, it felt like. The Rockets tried to sneak in there. But again, just because of the way, I remember watching those finals, and I saw, like, I don't know, like Andre Iguodala getting wide open layup, and then I saw, like, some other player get, like, some open. Like, it was just like, why is nobody getting smacked to the ground? Oh, am I watching the finals? Like, and again, it sure, it has to do with the spacing as well, especially a team like Golden State, right? Like the spacing creates the open lanes, but it's just, again, it's also the rules. It's also that type of fire and passion and animosity that you're allowing to foster between these teams. So real no rivalries. There's no fixed teams. There's no real defense. This is like there's no passion, no hard fouls. They're all connected, right? That if there is real defense, which creates that more of the mental battle, which creates, I think, more passion, especially on the defensive end, because now it feels like there's so few teams that are passionate about their defense. You would create way more of the kind of Miami Heat teams in some sense, right? Really hustle teams. If you reward it, that you're hustle around, then it's worth it. Because a lot of people kind of feel like, yeah, I could just run my ass off and then not touch him, and not be able to do anything anyway, and he's going to make, I don't know, 40% of his shots instead of like 39. Like, yeah, if I can really drastically impact his shooting percentage, then I might be willing to work hard, right? If you give that incentive for the defense to be good, I think it will automatically just go there, right? Like, so the real defense, physicality, will create harder, hopefully. Oh, well, if it's allowed, then they're not really harder fouls, right? It's just harder play. I think they should also allow harder fouls. Kind of ease back a lot on the kind of what you call as a flagrant. And you would get more real passion. I remember watching, like, games from Mike against the Knicks, MJ against the Knicks, and just any jump shot that anybody would hit would be like, oh! Because everybody, the whole team was like shooting 35%, right? Because it was so hard to score. And again, with the raised skill and with the new defense, I think this could be super interesting, and you could marvel at the skill. I marvel at the skill more of seeing, like, these old school players hitting, like, these very, very tough contested jumpers over people while they're being hand-checked, than just some guy stepping to the side and shooting with the other guys like, yeah, shit, I can't do anything anyway, so I'll just kind of go like this. Yeah, having that passion return, having a bit of your hard fouls return, and then if those teams could stay together a little bit more, this will automatically create rivalries. Like, you won't even need to do a lot of storytelling around it. Because, again, people could really say, I shut you down last game. Or they would really be like, shit, that guy just smacked me down when I went for a layup, and he's coming this really, like I say, that's just human nature. And that's just kind of like that primal response, that animosity that's going to be fostered because of that, right? And now people are just so frustrated because of incompetent refereeing as well. And then you can maybe put that up there as well. But that's also because those rules are so wishy-washy, I guess. I think in some sense, right? Like, then it feels like, okay, so now you're calling that. So so this was a foul now, and then it's just so inconsistent sometimes as well. And then you're not allowed to have any emotion about that as well. They need to get that emotion back. They need to get that animosity back and get some real refs, like some real men as well. Like these old refs that were like, yeah, bullcrap, I'm not having that. Okay, just like you got to have your masculinity back in the entire league, I would say. Because then if you have hard fouls, again, genuine dislike creates genuine rivalries, right? Like, and you need to have that. Oh, you need to have it. To me, that would greatly improve watching the game, the entertainment value of the game. Because, again, real defense is, I made you miss. And that is just, like, instead of just having all that space for the offense, it's basically like, oh, I missed. Because I got my shot, right? Like, how many people really get shut down or blocked? Like, oh, I just missed. But the difference between I made you miss and I missed is like a huge difference from both of your perspective and as a player perspective, right? So, yeah, that's, I think, kind of the gist of my rant. I mean, I like to say that I still like the NBA, and I still do because I just like basketball, but in the same way, I don't really like it as much as I did. Like, it feels like I'm more distant to it, like, I don't really care anymore in the same way. And I feel like the NBA is in danger. They diluted it because they wanted like the more offense, because it can sell it easier to the casual fan, right? But I think they're kind of making a similar mistake as Marvel as a studio is making. Marvel started with the uber geeky content, right? Like superhero movies. Comic book nerds are into that. They were like, oh, they're making our movies. That's the hardcore audience. And slowly they were able to tweak it a little bit to kind of reach a broader audience, and they became immensely financially successful, right? So that was nice and great, but then they started removing kind of like the things that made the comic, like the hardcore audience, engaged. They kept the hardcore audience engaged. Slowly started removing that, lost them until it was like really going bad. Then they lost the hardcore audience. But now you'll see that that casual audience is not as dedicated. So there might be another fad and they jump ship. Or it'd be like, you change a little bit and they don't like it anymore. Or some famous player stops playing and they're like, yeah, I don't like it anymore. I think the NBA is in the same danger of that. Like you have these hardcore basketball fans, and you try to reach a broader audience, which is great. I mean, I love for basketball to grow. But if you dumb down the game, right, like with the travels and it's like it's humiliating. It's embarrassing, like what they're allowing. Especially from like the best of the best, and then you're supposed to have that argument of LeBron versus MJ as the GOAT, right? Like, and it waters down the game in such a way that slowly and surely you're losing your core audience, like the hardcore basketball fan, and then because you're focusing on that casual stuff, but then it could be just one little tweak, or just, like I said, one famous player stopped playing. And all of a sudden, the casual's like, oh, yeah, no, I don't know, now baseball's more fun now, or like whatever, or it's some reality show, like, because they not really care about basketball. And now you've really lost your hardcore audience because you've been pushing them away. It's not just like the hardcore audience doesn't just stop because they're hardcore, they're loyal. So the fact that they're kind of teetering, and the fact that you hear this, I think, quite a lot from basketball fans. Yeah, stop watching, or yeah, that's not the way it used to be. Like they have this, man, I kind of watch and I kind of like try to stay engaged, and then that's been kind of like happening over like a decade or something like or more. Once you lose them, it's really hard to get to convince them that they're the target audience again, right? So I think there's a danger. I think Marvel has a huge issue now with their next phase, and I think the NBA, again, it's going okay for now. Like they're growing, they're financially successful, but I think that could be a danger of the NBA if they let these developments go like that. Yep, yeah, I just love the game, man. So that's my rant. See you later.